Hello, welcome to this information video on the Early Career Development Program. In this video, we're talking specifically about applications from arts and culture organizations who will be applying to the internship or cohort components. My name is Erin Macklem. I am a program advisor with responsibility for the performing arts applicants to the Early Career Development Program, and I'm here with my colleague Michelle Benjamin, who looks after the studio arts. We at the BC Arts Council carry out our work on the land of Indigenous nations throughout what is colonially known as British Columbia, and we're grateful for the continuing relationships with Indigenous people in BC that develop through our work together. We offer gratitude to the Lekwungen people, known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, on whose ancestral lands we operate our main offices and where Michelle and I are calling in from today in this video. And we also want to acknowledge and thank the First Peoples Cultural Council, who we have partnered with for many years to deliver the Indigenous arts programs. In this information video, we hope to offer some context about the BC Arts Council. We'll outline the BC Arts Council's strategic plan and funding priorities. We'll focus on all the ins and outs of the Early Career Development Program. We affectionately shorthand this to ECD. You may hear us refer to the program as the ECD program. And we'll talk about the application process and offer some general tips for grant writing. We also have a second information session recorded that is focused specifically on the application questions. You can find a link to that video on the Early Career Development webpage. And if you have any questions after reading the program guidelines and reviewing these videos, please reach out to me or Michelle, and we'll be happy to provide further information and guidance. Our contact information is on the program webpage in the program guidelines, and we'll also share it at the end of this slideshow.
The BC Arts Council is the arts funding agency for the BC government. We support arts and cultural activity in over 200 communities throughout BC, and we're housed within the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport. Our ministry is led by the Honourable Lana Popham. The BC Arts Council was established by an act of legislation in 1995 for the purposes of providing support for arts and culture in British Columbia, for providing persons and organizations with the opportunity to participate in arts and culture in BC, and for providing an open, accountable, and neutrally administered process for managing funds for BC arts and culture. The agency includes a 15-member council, which broadly represents the diverse regions, cultures, and artistic communities of BC. The council's role is to oversee the strategic direction of the BC Arts Council. The current council chair is Sehun Stan Chung, and the vice chair is Dana Claxton. The British Columbia Arts Council funds a wide range of activities, projects, organizations, and individuals. Some examples: we support community arts programming in rural and urban centers. We provide money to individual artists, arts and culture workers, and arts and culture practitioners to create new work and to develop their professional skills. And we provide funding opportunities for professional performing arts organizations, Indigenous artists and cultural organizations, art galleries, local museums, festivals, community arts organizations, and more. The work we do is guided by our new foundation strategic plan and the Extending Foundations Action Plan. The strategic plan prioritizes sustainability and creative development of the sector, increasing equity, diversity, and access throughout all of our programs and processes, support for Indigenous arts and culture, and support for regional arts and community arts. The Extending Foundations Action Plan places reconciliation, equity, diversity, inclusion, and access at the center of all of our work. These detailed plans are available on our website, and we encourage you to read them as they offer valuable insight into the work we do and the programs we offer. You will see reference to some of these strategic directions in the program guidelines and the application form.
In alignment with the Extending Foundations Action Plan, we've integrated equity criteria across all of our funding programs. And the BC Arts Council has committed to target an investment in underserved and equity-deserving organizations and the development of equity support initiatives, including a policy to support designated priority groups. Support for designated priority groups includes funding prioritization, dedicated programs, and outreach. The BC Arts Council's designated priority groups include applicants and arts and cultural practitioners who are Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, or Inuit peoples, deaf or experienced disability, Black or people of color, or located in areas outside Greater Vancouver or the Capital Region. In order to identify as a designated priority group, organizations must demonstrate that the majority of activities, programming content, and financial and human resources are dedicated to one of the groups listed above. This may be demonstrated in one or more of the following areas: purpose statement, practices, staffing, leadership, and engagement. Organizations that would like to identify as part of a designated priority group must complete the designated priority groups and equity data tool sections in their own online organizational profile. Also in alignment with the Extending Foundations Action Plan, the BC Arts Council offers 2 accessibility support programs. Organizations with a primary purpose to serve deaf or disability arts practices may be eligible for the BC Arts Council's accessibility programs. These include application assistance, which pays for support services for creating and submitting grant applications, and access support, which provides funding to support access costs associated with creating, developing, or executing a project funded by a BC Arts Council grant. These programs do not provide funding for audience accessibility or day-to-day access costs outside of the scope of a project. Accessibility requests are confidential and will not be part of the assessment panel's evaluation of a grant application. For more information about our accessibility programs, visit bcartscouncil.ca/accessibility. We hope that the first part of this presentation gave you a bit of a sense of who the BC Arts Council is, what we do, and why we do it the way we do it. Now we'll focus on the Early Career Development Program itself. And we're about to share a lot of information, but please know that all of this is available in the program guidelines and can be found on the program webpage on our website. This program is offered once per year. The intake is open now and closes on Friday, June 30th at 11:59 p.m. That means that at midnight, you will no longer be able to submit your application, so do submit it before then. Also note that the BC Arts Council office hours are from 8:30 to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. So we encourage you to submit your application before 5 p.m. on June 30th so that we'll still be able to assist you should you need anything before the office closes on that deadline day. The Early Career Development Program supports immersive and highly impactful opportunities for emerging and early career practitioners to develop their artistic and/or administrative practice, to participate in knowledge transfer, skill sharing, and reciprocal learning in the sector, to expand their career experience, their professional networks and exposure, and their professional portfolio, and to build capacity in their identified community or communities, for example, their geographic community, cultural community, their area of practice, etc. And later we'll discuss exactly what we mean by an early career practitioner, and we'll review the specific eligibility criteria. So this program accepts applications from arts and cultural organizations and to individual arts practitioners through 4 components. The information is provided in separate guidelines according to who is applying. So for organizations, there's component 1, which is internships, which supports arts and culture organizations to host an early career practitioner in a paid internship. And component 2, cohort, which supports eligible organizations to host a group of early career practitioners in paid professional development positions. And then for individuals who can also apply to this program, there's component 3, residency, which supports early career practitioners to pursue a learning-focused residency within an arts and culture organization. And component 4, mentorship, which supports early career practitioners to develop sustained one-on-one learning through a mentorship with an established practitioner working in their field, art form, and/or discipline. This information session is focused on internships and cohorts. These are the 2 components for that organizations should apply to.
So we'll talk more about eligibility now. And as you think about this program, you need to consider the eligibility of, first, the organization. This is the applicant. Second, the early career practitioner. This is the person or the people who will be engaged by the applicant. Both the organization and the participating early career practitioners must be eligible. And then 3, the specific project and/or the activities being applied for must be eligible. So we'll discuss each of these in more detail. So in terms of organizational eligibility, to be eligible, an applicant organization must provide arts and culture programming or services to the arts and culture sector in BC and have done so for a minimum of 1 year. They must also engage professionals in artistic, curatorial, administrative, or project leadership. They must also fairly compensate artists, arts and cultural practitioners, technicians, elders, and knowledge keepers. Compensation must align with project and community context and industry standards within the field of practice, including adhering to international intellectual property rights standards and cultural ownership protocols. The organization must adhere to the Criminal Records Review Act, which requires that people who work with or may have unsupervised access to children or vulnerable adults must undergo a criminal record check by the Criminal Records Review Program. And an organization must have completed and submitted any overdue final reports on previous BC Arts Council grants before the submission deadline for this program. So organizational applicants must also be an arts and culture organization, registered and in good standing as a nonprofit society or community service co-op in BC for at least 1 fiscal year prior to application, and have a dedicated arts and culture purpose. Or they must be an Indigenous, so First Nations, Métis, or Inuit community organization or Indigenous government in BC offering dedicated arts and culture activities. They could also be an arts and culture organization operated by a local government or a public post-secondary institution in BC for at least 1 fiscal year prior to application, with a community-based board of management that sets policy for the organization's programs and services, and that offers public programming by professional arts and cultural practitioners. Or the organization must be a for-profit book publisher that meets the eligibility criteria for BC Arts Council's publishing support programs.
So now we'll talk a bit about how we define an early career practitioner and look at the eligibility there. This is a person or the people that you'll be engaging as either an intern or as part of the cohort. So an early career practitioner must be working in one or more of the disciplines funded by the BC Arts Council, and this full list is outlined in the guidelines. They must be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident who ordinarily resides in BC and who has lived in the province for at least 12 months immediately prior to the application being submitted. For more information, you can review the Determining BC Residency page on our website. And they must not be enrolled in full-time studies. They must either have completed their basic training in their discipline within 5 years of the application deadline, or they must have completed basic training in their discipline within 10 years of the application deadline and be a member of one of the BC Arts Council's designated priority groups that we spoke of earlier. Early career practitioners would be eligible if their basic training would be complete within 6 months of the application deadline and before the proposed activity begins. Now, what do we mean by basic training? So this is appropriate and relevant education in a specific field of practice that has prepared an early career practitioner to work at a professional level. So for example, this could include traditional knowledge transfer, apprenticeship with a qualified peer recognized practitioner, or a degree or certificate program from an academic institution. And we appreciate that there are many paths to becoming a professional artist. When considering basic training in relationship to the Early Career Development Program, bear in mind that this program is not intended to support basic training. It is intended to launch an artist beyond their basic training. And this is true for folks who may already be a professional artist in one discipline or practice, but who want to transition or pivot into a new practice. This program is not intended to support the basic training in a new area of practice.
So now that we've talked about the eligibility of organizations and the early career practitioners, I'll speak to eligible activities or projects. So for a project to be eligible, the organization must identify the early career practitioner or practitioners who will be engaged for the duration of the project. They must also designate a qualified mentor within the organization who will work with and supervise the intern or the cohort. Internship and cohort projects must prioritize high-quality, measurable learning opportunities that will have a significant impact on the intern or cohort members and that respond to their identified learning and career goals and objectives. The needs of the organization are secondary. Virtual internship or cohort projects are eligible as long as all other criteria are met. So projects may offer a mix of learning and creation. However, as learning and knowledge transfer are the priorities of this program, the creation of new work must not be the sole or the primary objective. Projects must include specific learning opportunities and objectives and tangible measures. Arts and cultural practitioners involved in a project must be compensated fairly in keeping with community context and industry standards within the field of practice, including adhering to international intellectual property rights standards and cultural ownership protocols. An eligible internship project must engage an eligible early career practitioner as a paid employee in an immersive and structured experience. Part and full-time placements are eligible. And they must also provide a statement to contextualize the proposed rate of pay for the intern in relation to comparable pay levels within the organization and proposed hours worked and the area's living wage. An eligible cohort project must provide paid professional development opportunities to a group of at least 2 eligible early career practitioners who must be identified and who will be working on the same activity in an immersive, cohesive, and structured experience. All cohort members must be engaged for the full duration of the project. We'll talk about expenses now. The maximum request for this program is $30,000. You can request support for 100% of the project budget. You don't need matching funds or other financial contributions. And you do not have to request $30,000. Ask for what you need to complete the project effectively. The priority for this program is to support the salary or the compensation of the early career practitioners. Appropriate compensation is fundamental to all components of this program. So other eligible costs may be given less priority, and those include mandatory employment-related costs, often referred to as MERCs, and any related employment benefits for the intern. Any travel and accommodation costs associated with the temporary relocation of the early career practitioners. Compensation for a mentor is eligible. Compensation paid to a mentor already working within an organization is only eligible if the hours are supplemental, that is, not part of their regular working hours. Funding is not intended to subsidize an organization's existing operating or salary expenses, but rather to support additional costs associated with the internship or the cohort. Also eligible are supplies and other costs directly related to the work of the early career practitioner. And finally, accessibility services, for example, ASL, or personal support worker, or rental equipment related to access needs of mentors or the early career practitioners during project activities are eligible. There are a number of things that will not be funded for through this program, and we suggest that you look carefully at the program guidelines to see that detailed list. So in terms of timing and schedule, projects must be a minimum of 8 weeks and they can run for a maximum of 1 year. Project can begin anytime after the application deadline, but you should be aware that you will not receive notification of the success of your application until late fall.
And now here's a few tips to help you prepare to apply for this or for any BC Arts Council grant. All grant applications are submitted through the online grant system. If you've already registered in the system, make sure that your organization's information, including current email, phone number, mailing address, is up to date before starting your application. If you are a new applicant and you do not yet have an organizational profile in the online grants management system, you'll need to register and create a profile. Don't leave this until the last minute, because once your registration request is submitted, it may take up to 5 business days for it to be processed on our side of things, and you won't be able to start your online application until your registration has been processed. New registrants will be notified by email once processing is complete, and then you'll be able to access your grant applications. We recommend adding the email address noreply@bcartscouncil.ca to your contacts or safe senders list, and check your junk mail or spam folder to be sure that you see this confirmation email. For both new and returning applicants, please be sure to complete the designated priority groups and equity data tool tabs in your organizational profile. Before you begin your application, read the guidelines and the application preview document. Then we encourage you to discuss your application with Michelle or I before jumping in. We can help determine if your organization, the early career practitioner you wish to work with, and your project are eligible for this program. And we can save you a lot of work and disappointment if you're not. We're not able to pre-read applications, nor can we guarantee that your project will be successful, but we can offer advice and answer questions and help set you up for success. Remember that the volume of calls and emails we receive increases the closer we get to the deadline day, so please don't wait until the last minute. We'll talk about the application requirements now. So in the online application, you'll be asked to provide a detailed work plan, including a schedule or timeline appropriate to the learning opportunities and projected outcomes. This would describe the activities that the early career practitioner will be engaged in, with whom, and when. This will be a document that you upload. Also, you'll need a completed budget using our pop-out budget form. Use the notes section to provide details on the numbers that you're providing in that budget. Provide a statement indicating where, when, and with whom the early career practitioner's basic training has occurred. This will be added in a pop-out form in the application. A statement describing up to 3 relevant highlights from the early career practitioner's career and training, with a statement about each highlight's relevance to this activity. A biographical statement provided by the early career practitioner themselves, not the organization, in which the early career practitioner describes their current practice. They discuss their artistic learning and or career development goals. They talk about how this opportunity will have an impact on their artistic and or professional practice. They'll explain why this is the right time for them to engage in this activity. And they'll talk about the artistic, cultural, geographic, or other communities that they engage with and how this project will have an impact on those communities. The early career practitioner can submit this biographical statement in one of 2 formats, but not both. They can provide it as an uploaded text document or as an uploaded audio or audiovisual file. The applicants to the internship and cohort components will also require statements from the organization describing their history, mandate, and core values, recent relevant programming, expertise and capacity to manage the internship or cohort, including confirmation of who the supervisor or mentor is and their relevant experience. Also, a description of the internship or cohort position, including objectives and intentions, providing details of the rationale for the selection of the intern or the cohort members, the required qualifications and skills, and learning objectives and potential impact on the intern or cohort members and on the organization.
Also included in the application is support material, and support material includes a variety of documents that should be uploaded to the support material tab. The applications to the internship and cohort components also require recently prepared planning or policy documents. This is not mandatory, but could include up to 5 current documents, such as a strategic plan, human resource policy, anti-racism or cultural safety policy. And they should also include any documents outlining the current approach to equity in your organization. If standalone policy documents are not available, be sure to describe your practices and policies clearly within the application. If you're collaborating with any partner organizations or individuals, provide a letter of confirmation describing the nature of their participation. You can provide a maximum of 2 one-page letters. We do not want general letters of support for the project or the participants. And finally, we request a 1-page biographical statement from the designated mentor within your organization. The statement should indicate their relevant experience and qualifications, and should also outline their capacity for this project and their commitment to working with the intern or cohort for the duration of the project. Remember that all uploaded documents should be in PDF format. Now we're going to talk about the assessment criteria. And really the most important words to read and absorb from the program guidelines once you've determined your eligibility is the assessment criteria. This is the lens through which the assessors are reading your applications and making their scoring decisions on your project. You want to be sure that with every question you are answering in the application, you're thinking about the assessment criteria. Pay attention to each aspect of the assessment criteria, including the weighted scoring. This indicates the relative value and importance of each area. The questions are organized into sections according to the assessment criteria. The first is impact on the early career practitioner. This is the most important area of assessment. How is this project going to change the life of the early career practitioner? How is it going to transform their practice and have a significant impact on their career? The second area of assessment is the impact on the community and the arts sector, valued at 30%. How will this project have a positive effect on your and the early career practitioner's community of practice, home community, or cultural community? What kind of extended or reciprocal learning can happen? The third area of assessment is feasibility, valued at 20%. Is it possible to complete the project as described? Do the organization and the proposed mentor have the capacity to undertake the project? Is the work plan reasonable? And is the budget sensible? So this is what happens after you hit the submit button on your application. The BC Arts Council receives online applications and staff will review each one for eligibility. All eligible applications are reviewed by an assessment panel made up of individuals from different fields of practice with broad professional knowledge, experience, geographic representation, diverse cultural perspectives, including Indigenous viewpoints. The assessors meet together to discuss each application. They rank them based on merit and against the assessment criteria, and they determine which applications will be funded. The BC Arts Council informs each applicant of the assessment panel's decision in writing. Remember that not every assessor will be familiar with your area of practice. Keep this in mind as you write your application. Assessment panels change from intake to intake. So if you applied before, it's very likely that a different group of assessors will be reviewing your application this time. So the BC Arts Council tries to inform each applicant of the results of their application no later than 16 weeks after the submission deadline. Notification will be sent to the email address registered in your profile. Results cannot be requested in advance, but we do recommend that you contact a program advisor, me or Erin, for feedback on the assessment of your application after notifications have been released.
We hope that you found this overview of the Early Career Development Program helpful, and we want to close this information video with a few tips for setting yourself up for success when approaching a grant application. So you've navigated your way through the online system and you've read the guidelines and you've started an application. Now what? Writing a grant is like telling your story. You want to address the key questions that will best communicate your goals and intentions. It's important for you to think about these elements as you prepare to complete the application, as thinking about these questions in advance will help you to organize your thoughts and will also inform some of the other elements of the application, like the budget and the required support material. Be sure you're addressing the who, what, when, where, why, and how of your project. Some of these questions are pretty straightforward, but others are more nuanced. What is your project? What will you achieve? How will you make it happen? What's the work plan? Who is involved? And who will benefit? Where will the project happen? When is it happening and when will it finish? Why will this have an impact on the career of the early career practitioner and their practice? Why do you do this work? Why is it important? Why is often the key question for you to address. It should align with the goals of the early career practitioner, the early career development program, and it should speak directly to the assessment criteria. Why are you doing this project? Why is it important? Why is it important right now? What will the impact be on the early career practitioner and their practice, on your organization, on the larger community? The answers to why often provide the compelling piece that engages the assessors and brings your project to life in their imagination and makes the assessors excited about your project.
And finally, here's a review of some important application tips. If you are not already registered in our online system, do this right away. Read and follow the guidelines and keep the assessment criteria in mind as you go. We recommend that you draft your application early. Put it aside, come back to edit it with fresh eyes. Make sure that you are answering the questions being asked in the application. It's surprising how often folks lose sight of this as they make their way through an application. Remember that for this program, not every assessor will have experience or expertise in your area of practice, so keep that audience in mind as you answer the application questions. Choose your language accordingly. Also remember that Erin and I are program advisors. We are not assessors. We don't assess your application. So while you may have explained something to us in an email or over the phone, the assessors rely only on your application. You should articulate your rationale and reasoning clearly in your application, regardless if you have discussed it with us. Have someone who doesn't know anything about your project read through your application. Do they understand what you are doing and why you're doing it? Can they explain the project back to you? Answering questions in point form or short paragraphs is fine and is not necessary to write to the word count. Clarity is more important than fancy language. Be sure to only include the support material that is requested or relevant. And finally, be sure to call us if you have any questions.
And with that in mind, here is our contact information. We want to thank you for your interest in the Early Career Development Program. Please reach out to us with any questions you might have, and you can follow our social media channels on Facebook and Twitter to stay up to date on this and all our programs. As we've mentioned, Michelle and I co-manage the Early Career Development Program with responsibility for specific areas. So I can help with questions regarding performing arts, theater, music, and dance, and Michelle can help with questions in studio arts areas like media arts, visual arts, literary arts, and museums. We look forward to hearing from you with your questions, and thanks for watching.